Okay, let me start a new section of this playlist, Learning C Sharp, Introduction to Computer Programming. Let me start with this section by discussing how, so far, what we have learned is how to store data by creating variables. And most of the types that we have worked with so far have been what we have referred to as primitive types. So simple data entries that can be represented numerically in a very simple way, such as, for example, Boolean variables, numbers with decimal part, numbers without decimal part, and even strings, which we have already discussed how they have a numerical representation as well. However, in computer programming, there are other ways where we can represent and we can store more complex data types that actually have a lot of information embedded in them, whether if that is as different properties or different variables within a particular variable, or whether if they actually represent collections and lists of individual entries of data. C Sharp and any other programming languages have a lot of these more complex data structures that allow you to supersede simple primitive types and store more complex information. In this section, I would like to talk about, I would like to introduce some of these more complex data types, and I'm going to be discussing in this section two data types that are fundamental for storing large collections of data. One of those is going to be lists. So if you go to the C Sharp reference guide, you can see that it has a whole section called collections of the different types of data structures with their different properties, such as, for example, lists. Where is the wait, sorry. Here, like lists, like dictionaries, sorted lists. Like it has like a lot of different types for storing collections of data, and how and they differ in how they work and what are they designed to be doing more optimally. What we're going to see in this section is lists, and maybe farther down the road in more advanced playlists, I will talk about dictionaries, queues, or stacks. And then I'm also going to introduce another super fundamental structure called arrays, one that allows us also to store sorted lists of elements. And I will explain how is it different from lists, how is it different from collections, and when to use one or the other. And finally, I think in this section, I am going to introduce all of you to the concept of classes and to the concept of objects. Objects and classes are also data structures that contain properties and that contain functionality inside of them. And they're typically used to represent notions in the real world, such as, for example, a car, a person, or all these other things. And I'm going to do like a very superficial introduction to this. I'm just going to basically teach you what they are and how to use them. But I will do a full section later down in this playlist on object-oriented programming, because classes and object-oriented programming is fundamental. Is the jewel of the crown in paradigms when it comes to modern programming languages. Most of the programming languages that I use every day, they have some form of object-oriented programming within them. So it's very important that we actually spend some time together with this, and I will do a full section with a lot of episodes on topics related to object-oriented programming. But then, without further ado, let's start by taking a look first at collections to store large amounts of data. Follow me up on the next video.